Good morning, Idaho. Hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. This week, we'll be talking about a local Idaho AIM business called Idaho in a Box, a new pickleball facility, plus a historic classic car show in northern Idaho. So stay with me as we go through the morning banter and interesting events. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you guys had a wonderful week last week. I know it's been gorgeous the last week. I know this upcoming week it's supposed to be kind of a little bit rainy and dreary in the first half, according to the weather report I'm looking at, and then to get a little bit nicer. But hopefully you're able to enjoy that really warm weather. I know last Sunday or Sunday before last, depending on when you're listening and stuff, got up to like 88, 90 in some places I heard. I was just kind of sitting there being like, no, it's not August yet. It's not July. It's not June. This is just May, April. Please, no, don't do this, Idaho. And I was just over there like snickering in the corner and like, It's just, no. But thankfully, this next week's going to be like a lot cooler, according to the weather report. We're going to get a bunch of rain in the beginning half here to kind of cool things down, which I'm excited about. I mean, can't go hiking, so it makes for a little bit more of a laid-back week, and a lot of the outdoor sports and things and grills and cook-offs and different things can't happen. But at least it does bring the temperature down a little bit because, man, we jumped up way too fast for comfort, in my opinion. So it's nice to have a little bit of break from that heat. As for myself, I didn't do a lot last week, mostly because I was trying to catch up on podcast work because of being sick and stuff there for kind of that 2-week stint, just trying to catch up and get back on the horse here. But I did go into downtown Nampa with the grandparents, and I have to be honest, I have woefully underestimated Nampa. I've done a lot of stuff in kind of Caldwell and Weiser and Emmett and Boise and stuff, but I have overlooked Nampa, if I'm being honest, because we went around there and there are a lot of great little antique places, really good food to be had. The walking area is really nice. I feel like it isn't quite as loud or kind of busy sometimes as downtown Caldwell can be, but that might be my own perception. But if you guys are thinking of like a fun kind of day thing that won't be too expensive and break the bank, I would highly recommend going and dropping down into downtown Nampa on like a Saturday or something, because then they have the farmer's market and stuff, so you can go to the farmer's market and then you can go over to like the farm store or whatever if you're interested in like seeing some shelves and some discount clothing, and you can kind of go and walk around, and there's a lot of interesting, really cool small businesses that are in there that you don't run into in other parts of the state. I mean, everywhere's got their own little unique niches. Don't get me wrong. Boise is like a haven for that, but that's just because of the size and kind of the market that can be had there, because there's so many people, and so there's so many kind of niche little things that can be there. But Nampa really did surprise me. So if you got a day, highly would recommend dropping by there. But that's all I've got to share. We'll move into the rest of the podcast here with interesting events where we kind of go over some interesting history stuff and trivia and things about the upcoming week. And then we'll move into the news here with some really cool stories that I'm excited about. Continuing on into holidays and interesting events of the week, we have Monday the 8th of May, which is World Ovarian Cancer Day and World Red Cross Day. As for history, in 1660, the English Parliament declared Charles II King of England, reinstating the monarch. In 1886, the first Coca-Cola was sold in Atlanta in Jacob's Pharmacy. In 1985, China seceded Taiwan to Japan under the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Hopefully I said that right. And then lastly, in 1945, V-Day happened. World War II ended in Europe after Germany surrendered. As for birthdays, Monday was Edward Gibbons, Harry Truman's, and John Roberts' birthday. As for deaths, in 1873, John Stuart Mill died. Then moving on to Tuesday the 9th of May, which is National Homefront Heroes Day and National Sleepover Day. As for history, in 1865, President Andrew Johnson issued a proclamation stating that armed resistance in the South was virtually at an end. In 1914, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed Mother's Day. In 1941, British intelligence broke the German Enigma code. And lastly, in 1960, the U.S. became the first country to legalize the birth control pills. As for in birthdays, Tuesday was John Brown's, Howard Carter's, and Henry J. Kaiser's birthday, and is Billy Joel's 73rd birthday. As for deaths, in 1979, Cypress Eaton died. Next is Wednesday the 10th of May, which is National Clean Up Your Room Day. As for in history, in 1940, Winston Churchill succeeded Neville Chamberlain as the British Prime Minister. And lastly, in 1960, the U.S. atomic submarine USS Trident completed the first submerged circumnavigation around the globe. As for birthdays, Wednesday was John Wilkes Booth's, Alfred, Jody's, and Fred Astaire's birthday. As for deaths, in 1818, Paul Revere died. In 1863, Stonewall Jackson died. And lastly, in 1977, John Crawford died. Thursday the 11th of May is National Eat What You Want Day and National Twilight Zone Day. As for in history, in 330, the newly built city of Constantinople was dedicated and became the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. In 1812, waltz was introduced into the English ballroom. And lastly, in 1995, 170 countries agreed to extend the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. As for birthdays, Thursday was Irving Berlin's and Phil Silver's birthday. As for deaths, in 1960, John D. Rockefeller Jr. died. In 2001, Douglas Adams died. And in 2006, Floyd Patterson died. Friday the 12th of May is National Nutty Fudge Day and National Limerick Day. As for history, just one thing. In 1940, the Nazi Blitzkrieg and the conquest of France began. As for birthdays, Friday was Katharine Hepburn's and Tony Hancock's birthday and Homer Simpson's 66th birthday. As for deaths, nothing to note. Then we come to Saturday the 12th of May is National Archery Day, Train Day, and National Apple Pie Day. Tasty. As for history, in 1934, the Grace Dust Bowl swept across the U.S. Midwest. And in 1940, Winston Churchill, in his first speech as Prime Minister, said these famous words, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat," end quote. As for birthdays, Saturday was Whittle Pilecki's, hopefully I got that right, Joe Lewis's and Jim Jones' birthday, and is Robert Patterson's 36th birthday. As for deaths, in 1884, Cypress McCormick died. In 1961, Gary Cooper died. And lastly, in 2019, Doris Day died. Lastly, we come to Sunday the 14th of May, which is National Decency Day, National Underground America Day, and Mother's Day. As for history, in 1796, the English doctor Edward Jenner administered his revolutionary cowpox-based vaccine for smallpox. In 1804, Lewis and Clark set out from Lewiston for the Pacific coast. And lastly, in 1948, Israel declared independence from the British administration. As for birthdays, Saturday is George Lucas's 78th birthday and Mark Zuckerberg's 38th birthday. As for deaths, in 1984, Rita Hayworth died, and in 1998, Frank Sinatra died. Moving into the news here, we have Idaho Box. This comes by the Boise Dev by Ann Daly. Our first story here I'm really excited about. 2 high school students from Mountain View worked at grocery stores in the valley for a period of time. They observed the stores didn't have many local products available, so they decided to take action and try to address that issue. They started a company called Idaho in a Box, which monthly delivers various Idaho-made products to your house. They have partnered with over 60 local businesses to include a wide selection of things. They have artistic artisanal foods, home goods, and bath/body products. As for the pricing, you can pay one time for a single box to kind of try it out, or choose one of their subscription plans. If you're located in the Treasure Valley area, shipping is free of charge. However, if you reside outside the valley, a small shipping fee will be applied. So for any of you guys that aren't in the Treasure Valley, they're over in like eastern Idaho or up in northern Idaho, you can still get your hands on it, which I think this is super, super, super cool. I'm hoping to have everything figured out. I'm still figuring out some technical stuff. To be honest, I haven't figured out how to have like a record a phone call or whatever for interviews and stuff, but I'm working on that. So hopefully in the coming months, I would hope less like weeks, we can start having some interviews here on the podcast. Particularly, I'd love to reach out to these guys and have them on for an interview to talk about this, because this is super, super cool. I'm going to reach out and probably buy one of the boxes, because it's a cool idea to be like, hey, you know, you can come along as a business and say, I have this set of users that have bought into my subscription plan, right? They've voted with their money that they want to be on a plan. They want to work with a company that delivers them local products about the state that they love, which is awesome. And then the company goes in turn and says, okay, with that money, with that investment from the consumer, we're going to go to local business and say, hey, we have X amount of people that are really interested in local Idaho products. Come join us, and they can reach out, and it benefits the business, it benefits the owners that they get to make money, and everyone benefits because it's all about stuff that's local, which I love. Another reason here, kind of local yokel Idaho. But I think this is super cool. Hopefully the repertoire of stuff kind of grows. I also know I talked about it way back. I can't remember how long it was, if it was a couple months or weeks. Everything kind of blurs together when you're doing this podcast. That there is a store in the Boise Mall that all it specializes is in local Idaho-made products and stuff. They do, I think, less of the food stuff, but more of like the home decor and different stuff like that, and some of the bathing goods and maybe scents and candles and things. But it's really cool to see like the food side of it. Who knows, maybe they'll get that ostrich farm that's kind of out there in Kuna on there or whatever. I don't know how that would work with like refrigeration and meat and different stuff. If you would get like a code in the box, and then you could like turn around and then use that code to get like a discount or a free amount of like meat from the farm. I don't know. That's a different thing to kind of figure out if they're wanting to do that. But still, really, really cool. I would highly recommend you go check it out. I'm going to check it out, and maybe if I can, I'll give you an update here on the podcast. But it really caught my eye, and hopefully I can get an interview with these guys on the show here in the coming weeks, or hopefully less than a month, in my hopes and prayers there. But moving on to our next story here, we have new McCall food truck park. This comes by the Boise Dev by Autumn Robertsons. McCall is considering a new food truck park. The park would be located at 149 East Lake Street, neighboring the Yacht Club overlooking the lake. The plan includes spaces for 5 food trucks and space for licensed operators, outdoor seating, bear-proof trash containers, electric hookups for power, and a storm water retention basin. Many favor the park because they say it will provide a new dining option for McCall, create local jobs, and be a wonderful gathering place for the community. On the flip side, there are others that have raised concerns about the traffic it may bring and how it will put more stress on the downtown parking in McCall, which is already struggling during the summer. In the end, the decision is up to the City Planning and Zoning Commission, which met on May 2nd with James Marison, the applicant for the park. If everything goes according to plan, the park will be open this summer, which is cool. I will admit, I know some people are really, really into the food truck stuff. I haven't done it a lot. I kind of like going to like sit down at a physical brick and mortar, or still even better, just like a small little drive-in or whatever, than a food truck. Also because most of the time when I'm at places that there's food truck, it's like an event or whatever, and I swear at the events and stuff, the food truck people are like, jack the prices up. We're at an event, we can charge more because we're all food trucks, and they all kind of work together to bring the prices up. But that might be me. That's probably just conspiratory, shall we say. But I definitely should drop by because, you know, food trucks are definitely a way I feel like a small business can kind of get off the ground, that they're like, hey, I have an idea for this food or that thing, and I think my cooking is really good. And then they're like, cool. And then they go and they start a food truck and see if it works. And then if it works, it grows and grows and grows. And then they can start their own brick and mortar and then, you know, go from there. So it's a really cool way, when I have gone out and tried food trucks and stuff, to kind of see some of the new emerging kind of foods or brands in the valley and to try them out and kind of support them. Because if you find them, then you can keep in contact with them and try to keep connected with that brand and where they're going to be and where they're not going to be, and kind of help grow them. So cool to see that kind of developing a more physical location, I think, for more people, including myself. I like the idea of kind of having like a park rather than having to like drive all over the place and they're kind of like hidden on these different points and you don't know where they may or may not be. Rather than this idea, you could go in there and there could be a rotation. You could figure out the schedule, or maybe they have a sign or an online thing for the park. You can see when they're going to be there, when they're not going to be there. If there's a new thing, they're like, oh, I really want to try that. And then you make sure on your schedule to make it that time of the week. So the park idea I think is really good because it takes away kind of some of the negatives or drawbacks I feel like kind of exist with food trucks. But it'll be interesting to see if it approves or goes through. As of the recording of this video, I haven't heard anything or found anything from the City Planning and Zoning Commission on their decision and what's going to happen with that. If they sided with some of the concerns that people are having, or if they're going to go ahead with it, or if they're going to ask him to like put it in a different location. I don't know. I would look out for that and check and see. I'm not sure. Hopefully it'll come across my radar when they start trying to break ground if it does happen. And I assume if it doesn't happen, it probably won't come across my radar again. I would love to keep track of some of these stories sometimes, but in this mess of everything and just being one person, it's kind of hard to keep track on them to see what happens or doesn't happen on them. So I'm kind of reliant if it pops up again or not on my radar. Next one is a little bit of a sporting one. New pickleball facility. This comes by the Boise Dev by Autumn Robertsons. For those that love pickleball, which is a lot of you, this should be an exciting thing for you. According to the Boise Dev, pickleball participation grew from 3.4 million players in 2019 to 5.1 million players in 2020 nationally. So to feed this demand, several outdoor pickleball courts have been added all around the Treasure Valley, including Kleiner Park in Meridian, where courts were installed last fall, Manitou Park in Boise, Midway Park in Nampa, and Luby Park in Caldwell. Now, another new pickleball facility is planned in Meridian, but this one will be an indoor one. The facility would be located at 1135 North Hickory Avenue, near the K1 Speed and the go-kart racing space. It'll be about 52,000 square feet with 18 courts and a restaurant inside. If approved, it would likely open as soon as this October, with memberships being sold this summer. They will have a multiple different priced memberships, but the cheapest will start at $109. I can admit to the kind of growth and explosion of pickleball. I have never done it personally, so all those out there that love it, calm down, please. But I've met a lot of people, and I have a lot of friends that are big into doing it and have really, really enjoyed it. For me personally, I really like badminton, but then I don't like tennis. So I know pickleball kind of sits in this like in between the two of them, where it's like, hey, yeah, I like tennis, but I'm kind of like badminton, and I'm kind of in this middle. That's how I understand how it's like, but I could be wrong on that because there again, I haven't done it. One of these times I should go out and do some friends. I know last summer there were some people that I knew that were doing it a lot, and I was planning on going to go do it with them, but I didn't end up doing it. But having this kind of indoor facility, I think is really cool, because for most of what I've heard from other people is that it kind of picks up in the summer and then dies off in the winter. So having this kind of indoor facility will allow you to kind of do it all year. And if you really, really love it, kind of keep your skills up for even some of the summer groups and stuff that are reliant on the outdoor venues. But yeah, it just seems to explode. I remember, I think beginning of this podcast or whatever, or maybe the fall of last year, Middleton put in some courts, and then Meridian put in some other courts and stuff. So there's been a ton of growth in this sport of recreation, which there again, it made me kind of think on a side tangent. It's kind of funny how if you go to a park, you can it's almost like a museum for the sports trends of a society. What I mean by that is, like, if you go to a park and then you go around, especially old ones, and then you look at all the different kind of sports or recreational stuff. So, you've got the jungle gym for the kids and stuff, and then maybe you have the soccer fields and the baseball fields and stuff. You can kind of, in a sense, look and see what was like the trend and stuff as time has gone on, because at one point, baseball was very popular, soccer, lacrosse was very popular, so all these parks had really, really big areas for those, or baseball diamonds and stuff, and then tennis, had its thing for a period there, and so you have some parks that have tennis courts, really nice ones, and then you have other ones where, like, the frisbee golf was really, really popular, and you see all these golf stands and stuff that were built up and things. And then now it's kind of like pickleball is, I think, like that new thing that a lot of the parks are adding into there, which I'm not saying it's bad, but I will admit that I think as a society, sometimes here in America, we have certain like sports trends, and certain people keep them. They do continue on, and people keep doing them, but that we kind of grab them and then we go with them and we're excited and we install this stuff and then we do them and we do use it, enjoy it for a period, and then the like mass adoption, mass popularity kind of comes down. People still do it. I mean, there's a lot of people who do frisbee golf, and there's a lot of people that do tennis, and a lot of people that do all the previous, and baseball and all these previous sports and stuff that I talked about. But there seems to be like one, in a given time, there's usually like one singular sport that's kind of that really popular one and kind of drives the demand for the park service and stuff for what they install and what they don't install in new places. I mean, I feel like bowling was that at one point, that it was really, really popular and was a big thing. I can't speak for that because I wasn't alive then, but from what I remember from like history and reading stuff and kind of the culture back then, bowling was like this super, super big popular thing. And not to say bowling has died, bowling is still around, but it's nowhere near the hype it was at one point where like it was the thing to go bowling and everyone kind of did it. That or roller skates / like rollerblading was a really, really big thing. And all those industries are still around, but they just aren't as big or huge as they used to be back when it had like that mass adoption kind of popularity. But that's kind of a side tangent. But it'll be cool to see as this kind of develops how it works out. I didn't have it here in the article, but I think the restaurant in the indoor pickle court is going to have an alcohol license. They're trying to aim for that. It'll be interesting to see if Meridian approves that or not. So for all those that are interested, you can get that there if you like. But very, very cool and exciting for all those that love their pickleball and want to do it all year long. Next story is Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival. This comes by the Shoshone News Press by Molly Roberts. Each year in Moscow, Idaho, the annual Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival happens, which attracts music students and jazz enthusiasts from all over North America. The festival gets its name from Lionel Hampton, a legendary jazz vibraphonist and band leader from Louisville, Kentucky. Mr. Hampton played with many jazz greats, including Louis Armstrong, Benny Goodman, and Charlie Parker. This year, the Kellogg Idaho High School Jazz Choir and Jazz Band attended and came out on top. The jazz choir won first place in their division, and the jazz band won Outstanding Soloist for Donovan Smith's solo on Bye Bye Blackbird. Also, students get more than just the concert. The festival allows students to attend numerous classes taught by performers and college professionals, ranging from instruments, voice-specific classes, to lectures on culture and the history of jazz musicianists. They are also able to see 3 concerts during the festival as well, which I didn't even know this like existed. I know there was some jazz stuff up north, but I had no idea this existed. And I am a person who really loves jazz, especially, Louis Armstrong and Frank Sinatra. I mean, I'm listing off the big ones. Bing Crosby, those are kind of your big pillars of that time. You had a couple others. I can't remember right now because I'm not in gear to remember all the names. But I really, really enjoy that genre of music, especially because I feel like the lyrics are a lot cleaner back then than they are today, and it kind of uplifts my heart and soul a little bit more and encourages me than a lot of the modern music we have today that's being kind of created. But that's a whole different kind of tangent to go down. But if I had known about this, I would have loved to try to get up there and plan accordingly for it. For anybody that's up there in that area, highly recommend to probably go drop by. It seems like it's a really, really cool, really, really big event to go see, especially with the names that are kind of behind it and different people that are going to be attending and stuff. I can't remember when I was reading the article. I think it already happened, or actually, no, I take that back. What am I talking about? Of course it already happened because, the Kellogg already got their first place there. But super, super cool. If you're aware of it, highly drop by. I mean, make a note for next year probably about it to watch it on your calendar. I added it to mine so I won't miss it. But also, congratulations to the Kellogg High School. Really, really cool to see a local school, the local community, win on top at such a big event for just jazz in general in North America. So good on them. It probably took a lot of effort and a lot of work and practice to get their skills up to that level to win that competition. So congratulations to them on that, and make a note of the event in your calendar for next year. Next, we have St. Alphonsus Gets Bigger. This comes by the Boise Dev by Donde. One of the two most well-known names in Idaho for healthcare is St. Alphonsus and St. Luke's. While the former is going to get a little bigger, St. Alphonsus Health System and St. Agnes Medical Center, which are both owned by Trinity Health, have announced they will be combining. St. Alphonsus covers Idaho and Oregon, as much of us know, but St. Agnes has several facilities in Fresno and clinics in Cloves, California. With this combination, the parent company hopes to reduce staffing costs and improve efficiency between the branches. As for the new structure, the combined company would have the current CEO of St. Alphonsus as the CEO of the combined branches, which St. Alphonsus is a pretty big employer. I would say in the Treasure Valley, you meet a lot of people, or St. Luke's, I mean, the two of them, but St. Alphonsus definitely is a prominent employer here in the valley and stuff. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of affects the way that St. Alphonsus does things. It sounds like from kind of having the same CEO from St. Alphonsus being over the whole thing, that it's more going to be centered in Idaho, but that you have this kind of extended branch down to California. And so it's kind of centralized here. It seems like that's kind of what is happening when I remember reading the article, and kind of by the situation of the new structuring kind of being centered on the St. Alphonsus side and less on the Agnes side. Cool to see. Hopefully it does bring efficiency up for them and reduces costs so they can, continue that on to the consumer. I will admit I'm a little dubious of that. Hospitals and the health industry in general aren't known for being competitive and bringing their prices down, if you know what I mean. I would hope that would be the case. There's also a little bit of concern there that you're kind of cutting down competition. Granted, I could see the other person on the other end of the aisle saying, well, Trinity Health owns both of them, so it's pretty much the same thing. All they're doing is just changing the management and structure, which is really, really fair. But anytime I hear stuff like this, especially when you have like a really bulwark local company kind of getting combined with stuff out of state, makes me a little bit concerned because I like things being local. There's definitely a point where, big centralization is helpful. Like, for example, Amazon. Amazon could not do what it does if it didn't have this huge, massive, centralized system that everything handshakes and works together in this beautiful system so they can deliver and ship things so efficiently. But in other areas, especially when you're talking about something such as necessary, or what would I call it, like a cornerstone type of business that's necessary for a society, for a community like health, it can be a little bit concerning. But hopefully, as I said, those reduced cost and improved efficiency will come down to the consumer and the local person here needing medical attention. I've heard a lot of people saying about how far out sometimes it seems like some medical procedures are happening where they're like, yep, 6 months, 4 months, 5 months. I mean, better than what you hear up in Canada or some European countries where they give you something of like in years for a certain type of surgery or something, which is just crazy to me. So thankfully here in America and in Idaho, for where I know, thankfully it's only in the month marks, but hopefully this merger will kind of decrease that and they can be a little bit more quick in the way they do that. So there's like less paperwork maybe, and it will allow them to reduce those costs so they can build more facility to maybe meet the demand. I am not in the medical industry to know what exactly is going on there, what is causing that, but hopefully this will be an improvement for all of us here in Idaho in the efficiency that St. Alphonsus can meet for everyone and bring down costs just a little, because costs are getting higher for everything else. So bringing costs down for anything is helpful right now. Now we come to our last story. I try to save the last one as like a fun or interesting one. Granted, it was really hard to do that because we had a lot of interesting things in this week's episode. But this one, Wallace Depot Car Show. This comes by the Shoshone News Press by Josh McDonald. For those not in northern Idaho, you may not have heard of this. I for sure have not, but I want to go now. Annually in the town of Wallace, Idaho, which is located near Idaho's northeastern border, there is a festival called Depot Days. It is done to celebrate the town's history and the railroad's role in its growth. At this festival, over 100 classic cars are shown off, accompanied by a parade, live music, crafts, and food vendors. On average, the show attracts between 2,000 to 3,000 people. This is the main fundraiser for the Northern Pacific Depot Museum, which houses many of the artifacts and exhibits that details the town's history. For those interested in attending or participating, the festival will be happening this Saturday, May 13th. The parade will be at 10 a.m. and the live music will start at 11 a.m. To register a car, it is $20 per car, and the cutoff for online registration is May 11th, but you can register in person on the day of the event from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the depot. which just reading the articles and looking at the photos, this looks super, super cool to go up there, especially with it in the mountains and kind of this cool little town. Sorry for anyone in Wallace that may find that weird. You should be proud. Local, small, quaint towns, those are great things. It's great to be kind of quaint and small. It's great. But super, super cool to see the photos and stuff. It's crazy to see that you get attendance there of about like 2,000, 3,000 people. That's super, super, super cool. I also love anything to do with the railroad and stuff like that. I am a sucker for trains and railroad history and stuff. I know it's not super applicable nowadays, but like in another life, if I was born several years or decades or centuries in the past, I would have definitely gone into a career with the railroad. The idea of like driving a train across the United States and the kind of the experience and stuff would be so, so cool. I mean, to give it into context, I think we sometimes forget it, and this is a little bit of a rant of mine. We kind of forget in our modern world what trains were in the past. They were like the spaceships of that time. They were these super advanced, complicated, state-of-the-art technology. And if you were a train engineer, you were dealing on the cutting edge of like transportation and engineering in the sense of like way to move freight and material. It was super, super cutting edge. And so you got to, on the one hand, be this guy that's like, cool, I'm working on this cutting edge technology for the time, an engine, and it can pull all this weight and power and might, and I have to be careful and stuff and all that and everything. But then you also were like driving these massively, hugely, for the time, advanced, complicated systems out into no man's land out west in the Americas, and then having to know how to work on them and keep them maintained and happy and everything working well. It sounds to me like a really, really cool experience to go do and a job to have. But I know in modern age, that's kind of changed a lot, and a lot of it's being a lot more autonomous because in the tracks, the train just needs to go to X, Y, and Z. So there's even some autonomous stuff coming out. So it's not really, from what I've heard, a great industry to try to go into if you're new and young for like a long, long future. But that's a whole different thing. But coming back to like the depot and the car show, some of the photos look really cool with the amount of classic cars they're getting. Hopefully it'll be even larger this year. They said over 100 cars, so they might have 150, hopefully 200 to kind of increase that size because that sounds super, super, super cool. I wonder what the live music was in the article. They didn't say. I'm hoping it's like country or maybe some folk. Who knows? Maybe grab some people from the jazz festival. You get the guys from Kellogg, have them perform. Sounds really cool. And then the food vendors, I wonder if it's going to be food trucks or if it's just going to be local people from the town. But all in all, if you've got a free, weekend coming up this next week and you want to go for a little bit of a road trip and then stay up there, sounds like a really, really cool thing to kind of drop in, meet some new people, connect with some more local people here in Idaho, and see some really, really cool cars and an interesting town. I hear Wallace is very, very pretty. But that concludes our full stories. We're going to move into the quickies here. These are stories that weren't worth like a full article, but I still wanted to share with you guys. Just going to bomb through them real quick here. We have our first one, Burger Time packing up. This comes by the Boise Dev by Don Day. Burger Time, located at the corner of Kootenai Street and Orchard, closed its doors this last Saturday, May 16th. The restaurant first opened in 1965 and has been a favorite spot for people in Boise. It has been known for its mix of hamburgers and Hawaiian food, as well as its classic car meetups with live 50s to 60s music. The owner says the reason for it closing is that they were unable to renew their lease on the property, and that the property owner plans to demolish the building and build an apartments in its place. The news was a shock for them, but not to fear. They're planning to return to the company's roots with a new soft serve ice cream truck, so you might want to look around for that. Next, Meridian Car Theft. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. Last Wednesday, the Meridian Police Department issued an advisory urging people to lock their vehicles. This comes after a 41.9% increase in car burglaries since the beginning of this year. The police said in the advisory that the most common reason things were stolen was due to people leaving their cars unlocked or leaving valuables in them. So they are asking people to make sure to lock their cars, not to leave valuables in their car at least keep them out of sight, and to park their cars in a well-lit area. Also, if anyone witnesses suspicious or criminal activities, they said you can text a tip to 888-777. That's 3 8s, 3 7s, or submit an anonymous tip on the MPD website. Next is Tuesday morning closing. This comes by the Boise Dev by Ann Daly. Tuesday morning, a home goods store that sells discount merchandise is going out of business and closing all of its stores. The company has grown to over 200 stores in 25 states across the country with 2 locations in the Boise area. This happened because the company filed for bankruptcy in February of 2023 and couldn't find a buyer. As a result, it is closing all of its store and liquidating its inventory to pay off its debts. Then lastly, we come to our last quickie here, Eagle shooting. This comes by KTVB 7 by staff. This last Wednesday, May 4th, an overnight shooting occurred in Eagle. The shooting left one person dead and another seriously injured. The deceased man was identified as Matthew Rissell, the co-founder and former owner of Eagle-based company T-Sheets. A woman was also injured and taken to the local hospital where she is currently being treated for what appears to be a life-threatening injuries. Police are still investigating the incident to determine what happened. They have said that the 2 individuals involved were known to each other, but they have not released any further information about the relationship between the 2. Thank you for listening to the whole podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and it was valuable for you. If I missed something, got something wrong, or you have some advice for the show, then send me an email at localyocalidaho2022@gmail.com or tweet me at localyocalidaho on Twitter. This is a one-man show, so I can't afford to go over everything, but I hope I was able to cover as many things as possible. Thank you for your help and support. That's all for now. I hope you have an excellent rest of your week. Godspeed.